we are standing by to take you, not this hour, but next. So in about an hour's time, Daniel Andrews will be holding another media conference. It'll happen in regional Victoria, and the fallout from the Commonwealth Games cancellation has perhaps been a lot bigger than he anticipated, but he did make a political calculation, and many Victorians are probably on board given the $7 billion plus figure that he cited. But is it really that expensive, or did it just suit him to actually put that figure forward? And what does it do to our reputation as a sporting nation? Well, joining me live here is Independent MP Kylea Tink, not a Victorian, a New South Welsh woman. Can I say that, Kylea? Good to see you. Good to see you. Look, New South Wales is not going to pick up the baton here. It's too expensive. In fact, the previous coalition government did the feasibility study and went, look, it's not really something that we can afford or want to do. Victoria went ahead with it when not many other nations or states were willing to do so. So whilst I think he's probably made a good and popular decision in not going ahead with the Commonwealth Games, the problem is he's done so much damage to the Games along the way, hasn't he, by going for this bid in the first place?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, I grew up in regional and rural New South Wales, so actually I can completely understand why people living in regional and rural Victoria may be particularly disappointed by this decision, because the opportunities to promote regional and rural areas as destinations to bring in large volumes of people are few and far between these days, is the reality of it. Having said that, if we can't afford it, we can't afford it. And quite frankly, when I saw those numbers coming out overnight, that $6-7 billion, in truth, there are many, many things that I'm sure could even be done in the state of Victoria for $6 or $7 billion that would have a much larger impact, and potentially even still have that much larger impact in rural and regional Victoria. I'd like to see, my personal thing is, I think if the UK is the head of the Commonwealth, the UK wants to see it go ahead, I'd love to see London and Scotland step back in and pick it back up and make it happen.
Yeah, they might have to. The problem, as I see it, with that argument of, you know, he's a very clever politician, Daniel Andrews. Schools, hospitals and roads. I'm not going to hold a 12-day sporting event and rip money out of those areas. On that logic, we would never hold any kind of sporting event. We wouldn't put money into the arts. There'd be no, tennis open. There'd be no AFL because there is always better things to spend the money on. Homelessness, housing. It's never enough. It's insatiable. That is a really dangerous message in politics, isn't it? And it creates a rod for all of your backs.
I think what, to me, and I'm going to use a big word here, I actually think what's most egregious in what we're seeing happen is that arguably this is something the Premier promised as part of his politicking around the last election.
For regional Australia.
Yeah, for regional
those
Australia.
Regional seats in which he won and that are now Labor seats.
And so to me, this actually, while I haven't heard it talked a lot about to date, this is a classic example of a pork barrel promise that was used to bring about, to influence an election result that now is being failed to be delivered. And to me, this is the worst of party politicking. You know, when you find a message that you believe is going to bring people into your boat to vote for you, but a promise is easy to give, it's much harder to follow through on the other side. So that to me is a more interesting conversation for the state of Victoria to have. I think generally, to your point, Laura, anyone with any sort of sense of where we are economically as a nation at the moment, it shouldn't be a case of either or. At the moment, though, we have people who are sleeping rough. We do have people who can't get into homes. We have wages that are stagnated. We are understaffed. Arguably, if the balance sheet is that tight, this money can be used better elsewhere and should be used better elsewhere.
All right, let's stay on cost of living, because we are going to speak to Peter Beattie about the Commonwealth Games issue and the broader issue. You know, he's run a big state. He's no stranger to these big sporting events. But on cost of living, look, these things are a bit of a distraction sometimes.
100%.
So let's get back to what you're seeing in your electorate. And you've got quite affluent parts of your electorate, some parts.
A
bit well off. And that's not a criticism. Well done to you. But Are you starting to see this mortgage stress, and how is that manifesting?
100%. I think, and this intrigues me whenever we get into a conversation around things like the cancellation of the Commonwealth Games, or to me, these are distractions from what we really need to be discussing, which is what is currently going on for us as a nation in terms of our economic sustainability and our future. And how are we taking care of people? What does the long-term picture look like here? So I even think, you know, it's interesting for me. The voice is an important conversation for us to have, but to me, it is not the most important thing we should be discussing. We should be discussing why is it that we are 29 weeks into the year and already 30 women have lost their lives to domestic violence. You know, why is it that we are 29 weeks into the year and we have one of the highest rates of youth mental health distress and suicide ideation or, you know, attempting in any year that we've yet seen? So my role as an independent in that parliamentary environment is to make sure that as people of this country, we don't get distracted by these things. That people, I always like that line, you know, often you'll hear someone say, look, over there, you know, it's the bright new shiny thing, quick, squirrel, look there. Yeah. And I think whenever you're being asked to look at the squirrel, what you actually have to do is come back and go, hang on, what tree did it come out of, you know, and what is it really that you're not wanting me to look very closely at here? Because there is no doubt that we have a lot of really big challenges as a nation that we should be looking at and leaning into. And every time we let ourselves get distracted or dragged away from that by a general kind of more superficial discussion, we're missing the opportunity to make the change we need to make.
Yeah, certainly. Well, it's not going away. We have the conversation almost daily here.
Yeah.
Kylea Tink, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura.